You know you shouldn't eat it. You tell yourself this every single time. And then the fork goes back into the cake anyway, where your hand finds the bag of chips has somehow become the bag of cookies, where you stand in front of an open fridge at 11 p.m. looking for something sweet that doesn't even need to taste good. It just needs to exist. This is not a failure of willpower. This is not a character flaw. This is one of the oldest, most successful survival mechanisms your body has ever built, and it is currently misfiring in a world it was never designed to encounter. To understand why you can't stop eating sugar, you have to go back roughly 10 million years to a world with no supermarkets, no refrigeration, no reliable meals. A world where calories were not a threat. They were the entire goal. Your ancestors did not know where their next meal was coming from. Food was scarce, seasonal, and unevenly distributed. A piece of ripe fruit hanging from a tree was not just food. It was one of the highest value objects in the entire environment. It was calorie-dense, it was safe to eat, and it would not be there forever. Fruit ripens, gets eaten by other animals, or rots. The window to get it was narrow. Evolution does not reward moderation in a world of scarcity. It rewards urgency. Biologist Stephen Gallen, who has studied primate feeding behavior extensively, points out that fruit-eating primates evolved a very specific and very powerful reward response to sugar. When your ancestors encountered something sweet, their brains released a flood of dopamine, the neurotransmitter tied to motivation, reward, and reinforcement. That flood was not incidental. It was the entire strategy. Sugar tasted incredible because the animals who found sugar irresistible were the ones who prioritized eating it over almost everything else, and the ones who prioritized eating it survived better than the ones who didn't. Sweetness was, for millions of years, one of nature's most reliable signals of safety and energy. Bitter meant potentially poisonous. Sour often meant spoiled or unripe. Sweet meant ripe, meant safe, meant calories, meant survival. Your brain still believes this completely. Neuroscientist Nicole Avena, who has spent much of her career researching sugar and the brain, has shown through animal studies that sugar activates the same dopaminergic reward pathways as addictive substances. Not identically. Sugar is not heroin, but through overlapping circuitry, particularly in a region called the nucleus accumbens, which is central to the brain system for motivation and reward. Rats given intermittent access to sugar show behavioral patterns that closely resemble addiction. Binging when it becomes available, withdrawal-like symptoms when it's removed, and a kind of escalating tolerance where more is needed to produce the same response over time. This does not mean sugar is exactly like a drug, but it means your brain was never built with a ceiling for it. There was no need for one. In the ancestral environment, it was essentially impossible to overdose on sugar because sugar was rare, seasonal, and required real effort to find. Nobody in the history of early hominins ever had to worry about eating too much fruit. The environment did the moderating. Your biology never had to. Now flip the environment entirely. Sugar is no longer rare. It is not seasonal. It does not require effort. It is engineered, concentrated, and placed at eye level in nearly every commercial establishment you will walk into today. The evolutionary signal that once meant rare and valuable, prioritize this, is now attached to something that is neither rare nor particularly valuable to your survival. But the ancient machinery firing in your brain does not know the difference. It cannot update itself based on the existence of vending machines. This mismatch has a name in evolutionary biology. It's sometimes called a supernormal stimulus. The term comes from ethologist Nico Tinbergen, who discovered in the mid-20th century that animals could be tricked by exaggerated versions of natural signals. He found that birds would preferentially incubate giant fake eggs over their own real eggs, simply because the fake eggs were larger and more vividly marked than anything that occurs in nature. The bird's instinct, tuned by evolution to respond to a certain signal, could be hijacked and overwhelmed by an artificial version of that signal turned up past what nature ever produced. Modern processed sugar is a supernormal stimulus for your brain's ancient fruit detection system. Nothing in nature is as concentrated, as consistently available, or as engineered for maximum palatability as a can of soda or a candy bar. Food scientists spend enormous resources finding what researchers call the bliss point, the precise concentration of sugar, fat, and salt that maximizes craving and consumption without triggering the sensory fatigue that would normally cause you to stop eating. Your instinct for sweetness evolved to guide you toward a wild strawberry. It was never built to withstand a product engineered by a team of food scientists whose entire job is to make stopping difficult. You're not weak. You are outmatched by design. There's a second layer to this that makes it even harder to resist, and it has to do with stress. Endocrinologist and stress researcher Alyssa Epple, who has studied the relationship between chronic stress and eating behavior at UC San Francisco, has found that cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone, increases cravings specifically for foods high in sugar and fat. This is not coincidental either. In the ancestral environment, chronic stress typically meant a genuine energy crisis, famine, injury, pursuit, cold. Your body's stress response evolved to drive you toward the highest calorie, fastest absorbing food available, because in a real crisis, that food could keep you alive long enough to escape the threat. Your body still runs this program today, except now the threat your body is responding to is usually a deadline, an argument, a bad night's sleep, or a stressful commute. None of these require an emergency influx of calories, but your endocrine system doesn't know that. It reads elevated cortisol as an energy emergency and drives you towards sugar exactly the same way it would if you were fleeing a predator. This is a significant part of why stress eating so often means sugar specifically, rather than, say, plain chicken breast. Your body isn't randomly choosing comfort food. It's executing an ancient calorie acquisition protocol in response to a threat that no longer requires one. There's also the matter of what sugar does inside the gut, separate from the brain entirely. Researchers studying the gut-brain axis, including work led by neuroscientist Diego Bojorquez at Duke University, have identified specialized cells in the intestinal lining that detect sugar directly and send extremely fast signals to the brain via the vagus nerve, in some cases faster than a normal reflex. This means your body is registering and responding to sugar intake before your conscious mind has even finished processing that you're eating something sweet. Your gut is, in a very real physiological sense, making decisions about your next bite before you are. This is why willpower alone so often fails against sugar. You're not simply battling a craving that lives in your head. You are contending with a multi-system response involving your gut, your endocrine system, and reward circuitry in your brain that evolved across millions of years to treat sweetness as one of the most important signals an organism could ever receive. Telling yourself to just have more discipline is like telling your pupils to stop dilating in the dark. The system was not built to be overridden by intention. It was built to override intention, because for nearly the entire span of your evolutionary history, that override kept you alive. There is an important twist to this story, though, and it involves children specifically. Developmental researchers have found that human children show an even stronger innate preference for sweetness than adults do, and that this preference is strongest during the exact developmental window associated with rapid growth. Some researchers, including work associated with biological anthropologist Julie Manella at the Mennell Chemical Senses Center, have proposed that children's heightened sweet preference may have evolved to support the intense caloric and energy demands of growth and development, at a life stage where getting enough calories mattered more than almost anything else. A child in the ancestral world who loved sweetness intensely was a child prioritizing energy at a moment when energy was existentially important. That child grew into an adult. The preference did not disappear. It simply lost the environment that used to keep it in check. None of this means you are powerless. Understanding why the craving exists does not mean surrendering to it, but it does mean stopping the layer of shame that so often gets added on top of the craving itself. The shame is not helping you. The shame is not ancient. The craving is ancient. The shame is a modern invention, layered onto a 10-million-year-old survival strategy, as if wanting sugar in a world engineered specifically to make you want it constitutes some kind of personal weakness. It doesn't. It means your biology is doing exactly what it was built to do in an environment that no longer matches the one it was built for. Every time you feel that pull towards something sweet, you're not confronting a modern failure. You are standing at the exact intersection of two worlds, the ancient one that made sugar rare and precious, and a modern one that made it infinite and engineered. Your brain is still living in the first world. Your kitchen is living in the second. The gap between those two worlds is exactly where the craving lives.